Okay.
So to start off this episode, could you maybe introduce a little bit about yourself and your background?
Sure. So I was a teacher for 9 years at a high school, and then I was an administrator at a career center for a couple years. And then I went to Ohio State and did my doctoral work, and I really focused on leadership, but I focused on not the policies of leadership, but really the people within it and what makes people engage, what makes them motivated. And I really kind of started this journey of like trying to figure out what makes people happy and how do we help people feel more fulfilled at work, at school. And then for about the past 15 or so years, I've been working in schools to help them improve the climate of the school and to help teachers within their classroom set up safe, supportive, and proactive environments so that more kids can engage and learn when they're in the classroom. So I wrote a book called Neurowell that I work with in schools. And the book details really the first section is kind of why are people so messed up? Why are people sad? Why are people having a hard time with life in general? Why is mental health such an issue? And then I go in the second section is really the brain science behind perceptions and behind stress management and what happens in your body and your brain when you're feeling that way. And then the third section is for teachers to think about how they can set up that context in their classroom. And then the fourth is for parents and how teachers can influence positive changes in the home to make life better.
Yeah, I think everything that you're doing is really inspiring. I wanted to know a little bit more about your journey. So, you've been an educator for many years. How did you first decide get into neuroscience and decide you wanted to bridge brain science and education?
So my research work was really aligned with social science. And then about 5 years ago, I started really getting a better understanding of the brain and the idea that the brain, that's where the change happens is in the brain. So I was like, you know what? I really want to go like below the social science to the actual biology. And what I recognize, so a lot of people will call me in. I work with a lot of schools that work with at-risk kids. And so there's a lot of behavior problems. And so I started really looking at behavior and I said, behavior is the intersection between biology and context. So if we understand the biology of what's going on in people's brains, then we reframe the problems that we see and we come up with better solutions and hopefully we develop a little empathy for them because the part of their brain that's operating is the unconscious part of their brain. And then the context side of behavior, we have ultimate control to control our context and to be in positive places and to, make school a place that people feel a sense of belonging and positivity and, self-efficacy that they can do what's being asked of them. So that really kind of got me into the brain science. And it's been interesting because I've been doing training for many, many years. And this seems to be the topic that when I start talking about this stuff, like teachers really key in because they're like, I don't know this. And this changes the way that I think about how I'm interacting with my students.
Hmm. Yeah, so what made you realize that our current or traditional approaches to education aren't supporting students adequately?
So I think, historically, this started when we aligned. Well, there's two things. First of all, when we aligned teacher quality with student test scores, teachers shifted from teaching kids to teaching content. And so we lost the human factor in the education process. And that was, 10, 15 years ago. And so it's only gotten to be a bigger gap. And the second thing is recognizing that a lot of the things that we try don't work. And so we end up with just, you've got behavior problems for a child when they're in first grade, and they're the same kids that are causing you problems when they're in fifth grade or 10th grade or 12th
Mhm.
grade, or they drop out. So I saw this gap that said, we're missing a critical piece here, and that's what it is. And then I think the other piece is that our context in the world, because remember, behavior is biology and context, our context has changed. Like when I grew up, I watched TV that was about like family and being kind and making sure if you make mistakes, you say you're sorry and kind of it set up sort of my worldview as the world is safe and predictable and people are kind. Your generation, what you see on TV is let's you and I get together and we'll manipulate her so we can vote her off the island, right?
Mhm.
Or that the housewives or things. You're inundated with people being at their worst. And so that impacts actually the structures in your brain that form perceptions of how you perceive your reality. And then we have technology. Like when I grew up, I had to memorize phone numbers and addresses and things. And we don't have to do that anymore, which was is fantastic. But the problem is that the working memory part of our executive functioning in our brain doesn't get the practice, and so we don't develop it. So I hear teachers, talk about math and kids are terrible at math and they can't remember math facts. Working memory is critical for math. And so, we've got some technology changes that have happened. And then, of course, social media, one of the pieces with social media is that when you create your profile online, you're creating the best version of yourself and sometimes even a version above, right? You're only showcasing all the wonderful things that happen. But when you walk into a school in a brick and mortar real setting, you're walking in as like less than yourself. So from a neurologic perspective, that causes your brain to have stress. And so everybody's stress level is elevated. And then, online you can put on a flag or a cancer ribbon in your profile and you can get 4,000 likes. You can virtue signal. Those likes hit dopamine in your brain and make you feel good. When you're in real spaces, if one of you were to fall down and I helped you up and picked up your books and gave it to you and you said thank you get one. So, real life, that altruism, that doing good things for other people doesn't have the same payoff as doing really nothing for anybody, but having this sort of fake bubble online. And so we've got, that problem. And then the other problem is we have a society that wants to be sick. I'm always amazed when I meet kids within the first 5 minutes, they're telling me all their diagnoses. And when we have this vision of we're sick, I'm anxious, I'm depressed, I'm this, I'm that, I'm the other, that creates these filters in our brain that become our confirmation biases. So that the reality around us is filtered through those, and we're filtering them through a vision of people are mean, we're sick, the world is dangerous. And so we see the negative things. Our brain wants to confirm our biases. So I think all of those reasons are making it so much harder today than it was years ago. And then you add, AI's coming, and I think a lot of people have rightfully some stress about what's that mean for my pathway or my future.
hmm Yeah, I think that was really interesting and you explained it really well. And I know that in your book, like Neurowell, that's kind of like what you go into. So I was wondering if you could maybe elaborate more on like how our brains have changed regarding like stress management and also like executive function.
Sure. So really it starts with how our brain perceives things. So our brain is so 80% of the traffic in our brain is below our nose. It's in our limbic system of the brain. And that's the part of the brain that is unconscious. So there is a whole lot of thinking going on that we're not actually directing as sort of the CEO of our brain. So who you are as a human being and your character and your values and your morals and everything else live up here in your prefrontal cortex, but your stress system is below your nose. So as we have all of these contextual things that level up our stress levels, this part of our brain takes over. It's kind of like why when you have a fight with somebody and then after you're done, you're like, why did I say that? Like that's not me. That's not what I wanted to do. That's because you didn't say it. Your CEO of your brain was having a cup of coffee somewhere and your limbic system took over and told you what to say, right? You're still responsible for what you say, but that's not the part of you that made that decision. So perceptions are formed. All of our life experiences, our thalamus is down in that limbic system, and it's kind of like our data manager. Like people think of their brain as like my whole brain is me, and that's not really true. A huge chunk of your brain is just an animal brain that is not you. It's just trying to keep your body alive. The part of the brain that's you is this part. So in that part of your brain that's unconscious, the thalamus is the data manager. So it takes in all the information from the environment and it makes associations. It goes into a little memory bank that has sensory associations, which is why, like, if you ever sell your house, a realtor will tell you burn a candle that smells like cookies because subconsciously we'll walk in, smell that, and our body will relax because for most people, cookies feel like home or holidays or, happy times. Um, so these filters form, and then what happens is you've got reality. So pretend reality is a banana, and then you've got like spaghetti strainer, right? Like a filter. And so you've got all these filters going on in your sensory memory center. And so your thalamus goes in and pulls the filters that it thinks are aligned, and then that banana is shoved through those filters. So just like if you smashed a banana through a colander or a strainer, it's still a banana, but it doesn't look like one. And so now you've got reality and perception of reality, and they don't look anything alike. So the data manager, once everything is filtered through, writes up a report and sends that report to your amygdala, which is your security monitor. So if your brain has all these negative perceptions from, our context, all these negative filters, if you've got past traumas, if you've got, whatever it is that you have in your brain, and every single one of us is different, then that report is kind of shadowed by those filters. So then the security monitor either says, okay, I'm going to tap the stress button, and if I just tap it, a message is sent up to your CEO that says, hey, we're not really sure what to do here, if we should be uncomfortable or stressed or not. And the CEO gets to think about it. If the security manager wails on the panic button, then he basically sends a message upstairs that says, hey, CEO, we're in danger, so we need you to get out and just go have a cup of coffee. We're going to take over until you're safe. What we see today is a lot of students are in this constant hamster wheel of stress. And so not only is their executive function shut down, because this is where all that happens. And if your CEO is always drinking coffee and not in the office, not only are they not there to use the executive functions, but they're also not getting better at them. Because just like anything you learn, practice makes you better. And so this stress regulation system gets out of whack, and then it impacts your body as well, because stress is an inflammatory response. So, your joints will hurt, you can get lupus, you can get autoimmune diseases, you can have all kinds of different physical things that happen because of that stress system.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So is there anything like educators can do to sort of help their students with learning?
Yes, for sure. So when you think about executive functions, what we know is that, even just thinking about technology, like we don't need to use our working memory as much. And the new AI research is coming out. They call it cognitive offloading. So basically, we don't have to do that thinking, the machine does it for us, which again is great. I use Chat GPT all the time. It's great. The problem is that I'm not using this. For me, I'm old, so I developed that, right? But for people who are young, they're not getting that practice. So educators need to insert routines and practices that are intentional about building executive function. So, for example, I tell teachers, play memory games with your students. What's your favorite ice cream? And see who can remember all the ice cream. When you have a little downtime, play a memory game. You can do to think about like planning and organizing, teaching students to do that. You can do what's called learning sprints. So you do like, all right, we're going to do 8 to 10 minutes learning sprint. So during this time, every person in the room is 100% focused on the work. And then we're going to take a 2 or 3 minute break. And during that break, then you can be intentional about building positivity. So I could say, hey, Olivia, turn to your friend and tell her one thing you really love about her. Or what's one thing that you like about yourself that you're really proud of? Or let's get up and stretch our neck for a minute. Let's get our vagus nerve calmed down. Or let's, draw and just zone out for a minute. Creative thinking is built with an empty mind. And we never have an empty mind. I mean, we even take our phones to the toilet. So we don't have time where our mind can just wander. So using those breaks purposefully to develop some of those executive functions. And then learning sprints teach kids time management. You know what you can accomplish in 10 minutes because you're aware that I have 10 minutes to do this, and then I get a break for this, and then I have 15 minutes, and then and it kind of breaks up the class. So there's things like that they can do. For emotional regulation, one of the things I talk about a lot is teach people about their brain. Teach them about the departments of their brain. Name the departments of your brain. Like I call my data manager Harold, and my security manager is Bob. And
Mhm.
so if I'm having a bad day, my husband might be like, why is Bob so freaked out today? And I'm like, I don't know. I really don't know. Right. So it takes away that guilt of like, what's wrong with you, as opposed, because it's not you, it's this part of your brain that is like below your nose that's running rampant. So I think teaching kids that, and there's all kinds of different routines and ways. One of the things I talk about in Neurowell is intellectual safety. If a kid comes into a class and every day the bell work is stuff that I don't know how to do, then I'm immediately already escalated stress wise, and I feel dumb and I don't feel like I can do this, and I push away. And so I either get combative or I go to the bathroom and don't come back, or whatever it is. So finding ways to have students eased into class with something everybody can contribute, and then building up the rigor so as they're comfortable with it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that was really in depth, and I think those strategies were really helpful. I was wondering if you could explain like what exactly the Neurowell culture kind of is, and if it's like been implemented at schools.
Yeah, and in fact, I'm super proud of this. So I worked with a school that was for super at-risk kids. So these were kids that had been expelled. So these are the ones that teachers were like, you just can't reach them. So we said, okay, we know that behavior is biology and context. When the students walk in the door, this school looks like a school, smells like a school. It's kind of like if it walks like a duck and quacks like a duck, it's a duck.
Mhm.
So their past experiences in that thalamus, it's going to sensory associations to negative things in their life that have happened at school, because that they had to have had negative experiences or they wouldn't be at this specialized school. So we changed the context completely. We don't have periods in the day. The kids travel in pods. They do mastery-based learning. They can choose what they want to work on. So we do some power sharing with them. We completely rethought how we do discipline. And then we also started having like executive function class where they would practice things. And sometimes they'd play games, learn how to take turns, learn how to not get frustrated when somebody else wins. Learn, and these were like sixth grade through 12th grade. So when we implemented the Neurowell culture in that school, their graduation rate doubled, their
Oh,
discipline went down. She was, suspending hundreds of times in a year, and it went down like the last year she suspended two kids.
oh wow, that is a really
So
big change.
yeah, yeah. So it's big. And the thing is, it's not just for at-risk kids, it's for all kids. And so I currently am working in a school where we developed a priority framework for transformation. So the part of it is to develop the Neurowell culture, and part of it is to think about, in a post-AI world, what do students actually need to know, right? Content isn't important as much as it used to be. Now it's about creative thinking, about analyzing, about finding the gap that AI can't do, and the human piece of the workforce. And so we kind of created that, which is a lot of that is executive functioning, right? So we started with the idea of setting up the community, setting up the culture as a learning community. And so we were like, okay, so what's a good learner? What's a good community member? And we identified specific things that they do. And then we said, okay, everybody's not good at everything. So everybody's going to pick one thing that they want to work on. Maybe you have a hard time getting right to work and you procrastinate, or maybe you have a hard time letting somebody finish talking until you interrupt. And so everybody could pick one thing they wanted to work on. And we set up this celebration system where we built, teams that were working on the same thing, and we created this sense of community where we had like, we had a mascot, we had sayings, we had things that made everybody who walked in the door feel like, when I walk in this place, I'm part of this school. And that's called, in social science, that's called a collective identity. And they
Mhm.
studied that with the army, because they said, you got people who are all different races, colors, creeds, religions, different parts of the country, and they form these really tight ties. How is that possible? Because in most places, you see people who look alike kind of hunker down and they're sort of their own little cliques. Well, what it comes down to is that their identity as a soldier was superseding or more important than the other pieces of their identity when they were together. And so it's the same thing in a school. If we can make a school have this collective identity where when you're there, you're part of us. And even if you're different outside of school, then people open up. It's like, if you ever been to a meeting where you walk in and you're like, oh boy, these are not my people, right? You look
Mhm.
around and you're like, well, you close down. Where if you walk in and you see all your friends and people you like, you're like, hey, these are my people, and you're wide open and ready to participate.
Yeah.
Yeah. So is there like a way to extend this Neurowell culture at home, like with family and friends?
Yes, for sure. And actually the fourth part of the book talks about in the home what things you can do. And really what it comes down to is there's three things that I wish for everybody. This is my mission in
Hmm.
life is to help people be happier. And the way you can be happier is number one, by being self-aware. Number two, by having self-regulation. So being able to control that stress response. And number three, having self-control. And all three of those things are built through positivity. And so, when my kids were little, when they came home for dinner, we used to do tell me two good things that happened today. And it was amazing to me because when we started, they couldn't tell me. They'd say things like, well, I don't know, nothing. I mean, I didn't get in a fight. And I'm like, that's not good. That's the absence of bad, right? There's a difference. So they had to learn to tell their brain, hey, good things happen. And then their brain said, oh, okay, I better look for good things that happen. And I'll give you an example. If you have a set of identical twins, and one has a positive confirmation bias and one has a negative. I could say, how was your day? And the one who has a negative would say, it was terrible. I woke up late. I had to fight traffic, had a hard time finding a parking spot, was running in, spilled my coffee, ruined my shirt, was late to a meeting. It was a terrible day. You ask the other twin, exact same day, different confirmation bias, how was your day? Well, started out rough. I was running late, so I really had to, find a parking spot and get in here and I was rushing and then I knocked my coffee over and spilled it all over myself. But this really nice guy helped me pick my stuff up and my friend lent me her sweatshirt because I ruined my shirt and my colleagues were super nice about me running late. You see the difference?
Yeah.
And the negative one doesn't even notice those things. They don't register, they don't stick. They happened, but they don't pay attention to them because their brain is running it through this bias that everything's terrible. And so at home, some of the things that I tell people to do, like with kids that I work with, in the morning when you wake up or at night before you go to bed, since you probably have really early morning, lay in bed for a few minutes before you go to sleep and close your eyes and just feel joy. Like visualize a time or a place or something that made you feel really happy and fulfilled and joyful. And just lay there and then try to figure out as you're laying there, imagining this, thinking about it, how does your body feel when you feel joy? And then start to notice the joy that you feel during the day and pay attention to it because that's your path to happiness. These are the things that fulfill you and what fulfills you might not fulfill me, right? And then, the other thing you can do is like every day jot down two or three good things that happen that day. And then when you're having a bad day, you've got a little journal to open up and go, you know what? The world's actually pretty good. Today, not so much, but every other day, there's been great things that have happened. And what you'll find is those little bumps in the day stop being such speed bumps. They just become a piece of gravel that, like, annoying, but you get over it.
Yeah, I think this is definitely really important, like having a positive outlook on life, and it's kind of like the glass like half full, half empty type of thing.
Yep. Yep.
Um, I know that you also created like the 8C framework, so I was wondering if you could explain a little bit about that.
Sure. So, in fact, the book came out today. I'm super excited. So
Oh.
it's available on Amazon now. It's called Aspirations to Operations.
Mm-hmm.
And I do a lot of leadership coaching and working with administrative teams and company leaders and what I find is that they have lots of aspirational ideas. They're inspired to do something, but they don't have the tools to do the follow through. So the 8C framework kind of brings together information from all different kinds of leadership help. Like, you can get a leadership book on how to coach. You can get a leadership book on how to set up collaboration. This brings it all together. So the first C is culture, and it really is a Neurowell culture, but it's in any context, not
Mm-hmm.
just schools. The second, well, the second through the fourth C are your planning C's, and these are really important. You have to have clarity of what you want to see. You have to have coherence with other things you're doing. Like, for example, in a school, if we're telling teachers we want more student-centered instruction and project-based learning, but then we buy them a curriculum that's direct instruction, that's not coherent. You're giving them impossible tasks. They don't fit together. The next is cadence and dealing with the emotional impact of change and why people resist change and how you can kind of chart change out in a way that you're not just saying, here's where we are, here's where we want to go, now jump. You're giving them stepping stones. Um, then there's a couple C's that are about engagement. So it talks about how to use the brain science to coach more effectively and how to set up collaboration more effectively. And then there's two sustainability C's, which are around celebration and communication. And celebrating something we forget to do. People don't toot their own horn, and we
Mhm.
should. Like, are
Yeah,
you
that's
two
true.
friends outside of school?
Huh?
Are you two friends outside of school?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the two of you should make a pact that when you're together, each of you can brag on yourself for a minute. Like ask, what's something that happened today that you're really excited about or really proud about?
Mhm.
And let yourself feel pride because it feels good and you get dopamine hits and that makes you happy.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good idea.
Yeah. Give yourself permission to brag.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, so you talked about like sustaining change. So like what's the science behind like sustaining like change? Because like I know we make a lot of like resolutions, especially in the new year. So how do we like keep like this motivation throughout like long periods of time?
That's a great question. So about 80% of the people who made a resolution have already chucked it. So there's several conditions that need to be present for us to make a habit change. So our brain is kind of like a giant field of grass when we're born. And as we're a baby and we have repeated experiences, we start to carve pathways in our brain, neural pathways. So it's kind of like a highway with a whole bunch of exit ramps. And these exit ramps become habits. So some people are like, when I'm stressed, I eat, right? Or if I feel like you don't like me, I attack, or things like that that are negative paths. So we want to create an exit ramp that's positive. Well, the first thing we have to do is know what exit ramp we should create. So if I said to you, I want to be healthier. So instead of going, you and I are going to be on a health kick. Instead of going to Burger King every day, let's go to McDonald's. Like that doesn't make any sense, right? It's
Mhm.
not the better option. So I'd have to say instead of going to Burger King every day, let's go to that vegetable place and be healthier. So that's the first step is knowing where to go instead. The second step is to have the self-awareness to drive past the initial. So you and I are going to be driving by Burger King and we have to have the self-awareness to say, we decided we're not doing this. We're going to keep driving to the vegetable place, right? And change, just like a highway exit ramp, it takes a lot of energy to build a new ramp. Just like on a highway, you've got a lot of gas and a lot of equipment, and it takes a lot to pave it. So we have to have the energy to be able to persist. So we need the energy, we need the persistence to keep that energy up. And one of the big ones is we need the tenacity to forgive ourselves. So there will be a day where we go to Burger King. And the question then is, do we say, well, that was delicious, but we can't do that again. That was a treat, and we're going to go back to our plan and we're going to eat healthy. Or do we say, we were never meant to eat healthy. I'll see you at Burger King tomorrow. And a lot of people go with the second,
Yeah.
right? So that's really important. And then the other piece that's super important is that positivity. We need support because, if you go on a kick and, say like if you've ever had your hair done and not one person says, "Did you get your hair cut? How's it?" Or like if you lose weight and you've lost 20 pounds and not one person says, "You look great," or you losing weight or whatever, then your energy goes down. So we need to set up systems, especially buddy systems are great. We need to set up systems where we are tooting our own horn, where we're saying, I did this and I'm proud of myself. And other people are saying, I see you making effort and I appreciate it and it looks great on you. And then, you need that consistent support over time when you're struggling. So all those conditions have to be there in order for our brain to be willing to persist because our brain is always going to habits, what's natural. And so we have to, in building a new exit ramp, it takes a lot of energy and effort and time and self-awareness in order to succeed.
Yeah, that's definitely true. I think this is giving me motivation to kind of like follow through with my own goals. I was just kind of like wondering, how did you come up with like these 8 C's? Was there anything that like inspired it?
So I've been doing work with leaders for 15 years. And so what happened is I would get in there and I would see like, oh, they have no idea what they're doing. So I would be like, okay, let's clarify this. And then I would like create different kinds of activities for them to figure
Mhm.
out how to do that. And then it was the same thing with the coherence. It all grew out of natural problems that I saw going on where the system was broken. And so I've done this for many years, and then the framework just kind of grew out of that. And then I added that brain science level to it as well, so that it's not just tactical, but it's scientific and it makes sense with humans. And so I kind of just married the operational system with the human system and came up with the framework. But it's something that just sort of emerged out of my work.
Oh wow, that's definitely really cool.
So how do you envision like your work and like your books impacting like workspaces or schools?
Well, one thing I hope it will do in schools, like the Neurowell book, I really hope that it will give teachers and administrators a different perspective on behavior. It's biology and it's context. And that's not just kid behavior. I mean, we've got a real problem with teacher disengagement as well. Teachers are exhausted. And so, how do you become a better leader to set up that context? And then how do you help your teachers to have that, to be able to be regulated in their classroom, to set up positive practices. So that's, I mean, what I hope to see is I always say Neurowell is not a new initiative. It's not one more thing to do. It's a pair of glasses, and you look at your work through those glasses, and then you start to say, why am I doing this? This isn't aligned at all with what's going to work. And then maybe you start to revise or, redesign some things that are more aligned. So that's what I hope for Neurowell. And then the leadership book is kind of industry agnostic, so it works in any industry. So that book, I really just I want leaders to become more self-aware, self-regulated, and in self-control, and then to have this framework where they can actually make transformative change stick. Because I see a lot of really great ideas that fizzle out, and they fizzle out because one of those 8 C's is not functioning.
Hmm. I was kind of like wondering, how did you kind of like learn all of this neuroscience behind it?
A lot of reading, a lot of reading, a
Mhm.
lot of watching, a lot of reading research, following some people that I really respect in the field, and then applying it to my own experiences. One of the things that I think is a gift for me is I can take technical things and I can make them easy to understand. And
Mhm.
that's
Yeah.
something that, I was able to translate some of that science into stories and things that you can grab onto, and you don't have to know all the structures of the brain, but if you understand overall kind of how it works with your security and your systems manager and all of that, then you have enough information that you can actually do something with it.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I was also like wondering, are there maybe any like misconceptions that like teens today have about like mental health in general that you think that they should know?
Yes, it's not who you are. And I
Mhm.
think that kids identify themselves. So I do an activity with kids that's called an identity pie. And what I have you do is like, you think of a pie graph. The first thing I have you do is list all the things that make you who you are. So for me, it's like I'm a mom, I'm a woman, I'm a wife, I'm an educator, I'm this, I'm that, I'm a golfer, I love to play golf, I like to cook, all the things that make me me. And then put a percentage next to them. And the percentage next to them, the largest percentage is how other people will see you. It's all the things that are part of your culture and your self-identity and everything else. All of those things are important, but the ones you put as biggest. So if you put your mental health as the biggest, then you're the kid who's screwed up. If you put your sexuality as the biggest, then you're the gay kid. If you put the
Mhm.
artistic, you're the creative kid. If you are the music kid, you're the band kid, right? So we kind of choose how we are perceived by others based on what we decide to disclose. And I think when we have the largest chunk of who we are being determined by what's wrong with us rather than what's right with us, it impacts that limbic system of your brain and it makes it harder to find happiness.
Yeah. So is there like a way to like perceive yourself like beyond your mental health or like beyond like the cliches?
Yeah, I think one of it is to recognize, and this is something that I really blame the medical industry on, is, if you went to the doctor and you said, I have heartburn, the doctor wouldn't say, oh, well, okay, you're diagnosed with heartburn. They would figure out why you have heartburn. And if you
Yeah.
have a heart problem, they'd give you different medicine than if you have acid reflux, right? But if you go to the doctor and you say, I'm depressed, I'm sad, they go, you have depression, here's a pill. Or I'm nervous all the time. Okay, you have anxiety, here's a pill. Rather than saying this is a symptom of something else, they're immediately going to the disease. And the National Institute of Health came out with some statistics that 98.7% of social anxiety diagnoses are misdiagnosed. So think about that for a minute. Like everybody is nervous when they walk into a social situation for the first time. It's normal. But in today's world, the minute we feel discomfort, our brain goes from just being alert to full alarm. And we are way overstressed. So some of what I would say is kids need to start to think about what is the normal range of motions, right? There's normal range of emotions. Everybody has a day where you feel down. Everybody has a day when you're feeling uncomfortable or kind of like I don't belong here or whatever. And that's okay. It's normal. But when you start to expect it and when you start to look for it in the same way of those twins, if you're always looking for the bad things, then you're going to confirm that bias and you're going to make it worse for yourself. So I think there are some people who truly have depression and have anxiety. I'm not trying to say there aren't. But I think we've got a whole lot of kids and adults who don't want to do the work with their brain. They just want a pill to fix it. And they want it to be a disease's fault rather than this is something in my mind. And I used to tell my kids all the time, you get to choose. You get to choose whether you're happy or not. You get to choose all those things. Now, if you've had systems and habits and exit ramps that have kept you sad for a long time, it's going to take some energy and time and repetition for you to change that habit. But like, this isn't reality. Your depression or your anxiety is not reality. It's just a symptom of the way that your brain is processing things, and you have the power to change it.
Yeah, I really like how you brought up like the importance of choice and kind of like choosing that mindset. So kind of like as a wrap-up question, could you take us through maybe what your current goals are or what your current projects are right now?
Sure. So right now, my goal is so the book just came out today. So what I would really like to do is to be a thought leader in this arena, to do more like podcasts, to do more, speaking, to do some keynote addresses. I did a keynote address this summer in Chicago, which was wonderful. So I want to do more of that kind of speaking and sharing this knowledge with people, and then take maybe 4 or 5 clients that I can go deep dive with each year to help with that transformation. So that's one of my goals. And then the project that I'm working on now is I have a book that I'm drafting out that will be just for individuals. So, I've written one for schools, I've written one kind of for business. So this one will really be like you buy it off the shelf and it's a workbook to help you
Oh,
implement these things that will make you happier, healthier, and more successful.
wow. Okay, that's really cool.
Yeah.
And we wish you the best of luck with like your future goals and your book, which
Yeah,
sounds, yeah,
congratulations.
congratulations on like the release of your book.
Thank you so much. And keep in touch. I'll let you know when the other one comes out. It'll probably be, toward the end of 26 that I finally get it out. But
Mhm.
yeah, I appreciate you and I appreciate you giving me some time to talk with you. I hope you've learned some things and
Yeah, we definitely have. So thank you so much for taking the time to share like your wisdom with
yeah, you're
us.
welcome.
Okay, so thank you. We hope you
Yeah.
have a nice rest of your week.
Thank you. You too.
Bye.
Bye.